Well, let's return now to Syria, where more than 200,000 refugees are now known to have been displaced since the Turkish offensive in the country's north. For more on this latest humanitarian crisis, I'm joined by Robert Onus. He's the emergency manager for Syria at MSF, which is Doctors Without Borders. Robert, good to talk to you. Thank you very much for joining us. MSF made the difficult decision to suspend operations in northern Syria. What led to that decision?
Sure. I mean, as you're well aware, the conflict really erupted in the last week or so, and our teams have been present in northeast Syria for many years, supporting hospitals, health centres and people in displacement camps. As the conflict erupted, we really saw that we couldn't negotiate or ensure the safety of our staff and also of the patients. I mean, there are many different armed groups who are fighting right now in the northeast of Syria, and without those assurances that our staff would be safe, it becomes almost impossible to be able to deliver assistance to the population who very much needs it.
So to that point, what is happening to that group of people that you were servicing before?
Yeah, it's a very good question. It's always important to recognise, I guess, that in northeast Syria there was already large-scale humanitarian needs, more than 100,000 people living in displacement camps before this conflict, and now we see tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands more being displaced into that same area. Many of those camps have been disbanded, people have fled from the conflict, and right now we're very concerned about the lack of access to water, lack of access to medical care, and the impending winter, which will make life even that much more difficult for people.
As you pointed out, the resources of these people must be at an incredible low.
Yeah, you see it often that people's resources were already stretched, and with the conflict, many houses were destroyed in cities like Raqqa. And people didn't have the opportunity to return, and so were already living in these displacement camps in a very basic living conditions, in a tent, maybe 6, 7 people living in one very small space, water and food being delivered by humanitarian organizations. And now that organizations like ours have left, those people who are 100% reliant on that assistance have very few places to which to turn. On top of that, you have the newly displaced who are literally fleeing with nothing more than what they can carry and finding shelter wherever they can. And for many, that's in schools or shops or sometimes with family. And for those people too, it's a very difficult situation to be in.
Indeed. The current ceasefire that was declared a few days ago, did that give you any opportunity to provide support organisations like yours?
It's certainly a good sign. I mean, as long as we can limit the suffering of the people in northeast Syria, I think that's always going to be a good sign. For us, we've continued to try to provide water where we can, and especially to those displacement camps and displaced populations. But knowing that this cessation of hostilities is only temporary at this stage, it's a bit too early for us to say that we can then go back at full scale and start supporting the hospitals and health centres that we've been supporting over the last several years.
We hear talk of ethnic cleansing as a large number of those people that have started moving are Kurds. How concerning to your organisation is that possibility?
I think for us, certainly the focus is always going to be on ensuring that all people have access to humanitarian assistance, regardless of their religion or ethnicity. I don't have anything, I mean, I can't really comment on whether or not there has been any forced displacement of specific ethnic groups. But, until there is full and free access for humanitarian organizations, until the population has access to that humanitarian assistance, I think it is important that we continue to monitor what's happening in northeast Syria and continue to push for that freedom, which is legislated under international humanitarian law.
Robert, in your time in this field, is this crisis in Syria that now has been going on for so many years among the worst that you have seen?
I think it's very difficult to compare one crisis with another. I mean, and that's not something that we would normally do. I think what's important here is to look at the suffering, and that suffering occurs across a region, across a wide population, but also at the individual level. And it's not just from the direct impacts of the conflict. It's not just the bombing and the shelling and the displacement, but all of that also causes breakages in existing systems. The health system that was functioning in some form or another a month or so ago is very much dysfunctional now because a lot of the organizations have pulled out, or people can't access those hospitals. And so, the layers of suffering and the layers of hardship that are created by this conflict, and especially this new wave of conflict, are sometimes underestimated and certainly need an increased and adequate international response.
Really appreciate your time tonight, Robert. Thank you.
Thank you.